Hey everyone, this is Jeff of Telflater Mouse. Today we're going to have a look at the Mercury Rise TR-50 torpedo revolver. This is essentially a 50 caliber CO2 powered paintball gun that a lot of people are opting to use for self-defense. Now there's actually a pretty good selection of different types of ammo for this thing. Probably a better selection of ammo for this than you would find for a 20 gauge or 410 shotgun. Now the gun is pretty big, it's 10 inches in length and features a smoothbore. It's not rifled at all. The gun has a quick change mechanism for changing the cylinder, which holds 6 rounds. The cylinders are pretty cheap, they're only about $15, and I think it's handy to have a spare. The gun is loaded with the cylinder removed from the gun. Now this is their self-defense powder ball, which actually has baby powder in it, and they also have one that has pepper in it, which they wouldn't ship to California. But the powder is much more deadly because it'll give the intruder ovarian cancer, at least according to those lawyer commercials. Now another round we'll be testing is called the rubber steel ball. It's essentially a miniature mouse ball, if you remember those things. And no, regular mouse balls will not fit in a 12 gauge. Another projectile we'll be testing is called the Devastator. It has a really high rating, and we'll see if that is merited or not. Now this is the heaviest projectile we'll test. It's supposed to break glass. I guess that's a big deal. And then finally we have the powder torpedo. This is a really long round. It's kind of inspired by the shape of a cartoon bomb, I think. And again, you can get the pepper version of this. Note that the fins are slanted to give it spin. Now on a side note, I would say that all the ammo for this gun would be considered very expensive when compared to 9mm or 45 ACP. So it is nice to be able to trap and reuse the ammo if possible. Now most modern revolvers do not have a safety on it, but this does have a safety for your peace of mind. The torpedo revolver uses just your everyday 12-gram power-let CO2 capsules, and it's loaded with the nipple facing outwards, the proper way. The gun can be stored indefinitely in this condition until you press that cap. It is now charged and ready to shoot. Now I was able to get about 18 shots from a CO2 cartridge. This is a big bore gun, so it uses up the CO2 rather fast. Like all CO2 guns, the first shot is always the most powerful, and it just continues to drop after that. Now you'll notice that the valve is sticking a little bit. And I was told by somebody in a forum that this is because I over-lubed the gun with the silicone oil. The very cold CO2 is trying to freeze that oil and it makes it gummy, so it makes sense. So I'm not going to give you any advice on how to lubricate this gun. Now in shots 16, 17, and 18, the velocity really decreases, so it's time to change out the CO2 cartridge. We bleed off the excess gas, and now we can unscrew the cap and remove the spent CO2 cartridge. Now as far as the sights go, the first time you use the gun you may notice that it shoots a little bit high. This is because the gun is set up to use a 6 o'clock hold, and a lot of real firearms are actually set up the same way. The alternative is to bury the front sight in the rear sight, which is a little bit awkward. Now let's take a look at some of the ammo for the torpedo revolver. The ammo from Mercury Rise comes in these kind of slick mylar waterproof packages. Now I imagine if they weren't packaged this way, the powder inside would get all clumped up and it wouldn't disperse properly. But I guess my biggest gripe is they sell these in 10-round packs. Well, we have a 6-shot revolver, so you cannot fill 2 cylinders up with one package. So I think a lot of people would really appreciate if they sold their ammo in 12-round packages. And it's just like the hot dog count versus bun count thing all over again. A couple people are going to be eating hot dogs on a piece of bread. Okay, the first type of ammo we're going to demonstrate is called the self-defense powder torpedo. Now these have angled fins, as I mentioned before, and when you shoot it, the muzzle blast causes the projectile to spin counterclockwise. As it travels downrange, the rotation slows down because the airflow is trying to make the projectile spin clockwise. But it never really starts to spin clockwise, it more or less comes to a stop. But despite that, I did find these rounds to be rather accurate. Now I don't consider myself a great shooter or even a good shooter. I'm kind of a mediocre shooter. And somehow I managed to hit the same exact spot with 2 consecutive shots. I gotta say I had a lot of fun shooting this gun, especially I was just able to film it in my driveway, believe it or not. Now most of the time the powder capsules broke open, but there was a couple times they didn't, and I wanted to show that. Now here we have a kind of a glancing shot, and it was enough to break it open and disperse that powder. And if we were shooting the pepper rounds, that powder would behave the same way and get in their eyes and nose and mouth and all that. Now this shot I'm just firing as fast as I can. Accuracy is suffering a little bit. And I was just shooting into this really thick double-walled cardboard box as my backstop. Now what surprised me is all these rounds went right through this really thick cardboard. You can see here it's like 5 layers of corrugation, and it nearly went through the other side of the box too. But the really surprising part is it didn't cause the little capsules to break open, and at the bottom of the box you can see that the rounds are down there. Some of the fins are broken off, but I could almost reuse those things and shoot them again. And at almost 80 cents a round, it would be nice to get a couple shots out of each one. Next up is the very light and very fast self-defense powder ball. The accuracy of the powder balls were decent, not quite as good as the torpedo rounds, but good enough for self-defense range. Now each type of ammo did have its own distinctive ballistics, so no matter what you're using, practice with it until you know where the point of impact is going to be. And just like the powder torpedo, every once in a while some of them didn't break open, but for the most part they did break open and disperse that powder very nicely. Now if you're using a real firearm, you're going to want to shoot at the torso, the center mass, but with a less lethal weapon like this, you're going to want to shoot for the face, especially if you're using the pepper balls. You'll want to practice not only so you can get consistent headshots, but also practice so that you are very familiar with how to operate the gun, even in the most stressful and dark conditions. The next type of ammo we'll look at is called the rubber steel ball. Now this is quite a bit heavier and therefore a little bit slower in velocity. Now I did find the rubber steel balls to be very balanced, and that translated into pretty good accuracy. And being heavier, it maintained its velocity a little bit further than the lighter rounds we tested. Now shooting into ballistic gel, we did get a little bit of penetration, more than I expected in fact. We got about 3/4 of an inch penetration in that big gel block. The accuracy of this round I thought was pretty good. The ball did manage to penetrate the soda can easily, and I definitely would never want to be hit by one of these things. But what I really appreciate about these rounds is the fact that they're completely reusable if you can find them again. So they pack a pretty good punch, and since they're reusable, they're probably the most economic round to train with. Now there is a lot of aftermarket ammo for this gun, some better than others. Now these are called the Devastator. These are about 66 cents a round, but it does have really good reviews on Amazon. It's essentially a solid steel ball housed in a plastic sabot. But the description is almost comical. You'd think it was written by, I don't know, a Daily Mail journalist. I mean, full metal jacket, bullet with steel core, penetrates glass, plywood, and thin sheet metal. The most powerful self-defense bullets on the market. Sounds pretty good, huh? And the reviews are pretty entertaining too. Be sure that you only shoot is that something you want to kill. And he claims he was able to blow a 1-gallon jug of water in half. That's pretty good. Well, let's see how well the Devastator does in our test. Well, at first I thought I was going to need like 2 gel blocks to capture this monster round, but I think 1 block will do fine. In our first shot, using a fresh cartridge, we got 287 feet per second and 17.9 joules. The Devastator did seem to be flying pretty straight through the air in these tests. Now, whether a round is lethal or less lethal is very subjective. Maybe if you hit somebody directly in the eye, you might kill them with this. I don't know. Overall, the penetration of the Devastator was about exactly the same as our steel rubber ball, the miniature mouse ball. The Devastator did a pretty good job boring a hole through our clay block. The rubber steel ball would have done pretty much exact same damage as that. And as far as the claims go about breaking glass, well, it breaks glass. Even when it wasn't even a direct hit, it was just kind of a glancing shot. Now with my first shot, I actually missed the bottle, but I did get it on the second shot. Now most of the shots using the Devastator were pretty accurate, and the pellet was very stable in flight. The impacts were pretty impressive, but in this case it didn't go all the way through our foam head. Now, of course, we had to shoot a 1-gallon water jug to see if we could blow the lungs out of it. But as you can see in this shot, the projectile was flying sideways on impact, and that really affected its accuracy. The second shot wasn't much better. Again, hit sideways and wasn't quite as accurate. Now, I heard there's a way to modify the gun to shoot faster, and even if you got this thing up to like 350 or 400 feet per second, it's not going to do much more than that. No matter what you do, it's going to be a less lethal weapon. Now, don't get me wrong, the gun is a lot of fun to shoot. I really enjoyed making this video, and I think it would be a great training aid to use in your basement or backyard to practice shooting without making a lot of noise. Now, whether or not you want to protect your home, your life, and your family's life with a less lethal weapon like this, that's up to you. Now, if you're a felon or even a casual marijuana user and you can't legally own a real firearm, this may be a good option for you. Now, at best, you may be able to repel an intruder with a weapon like this, or you just might make him mad and he will pull out a more lethal weapon and use it on you. Let me know in the comments whether or not you would use a less lethal weapon instead of an actual firearm. Thanks for watching.